like we have a quorum and looks like we've got clear of our guests. So we're going to bring our transportation committee meeting to order. There's a sign up sheet. We're going to take up 4 measures today. If anybody's here to speak on any of those, there's a sign up sheet down front. Thank you. Before we get started, I'm going to recognize Representative Prince. Open us in prayer. Trying to get your volume up.
For this day, Father. We thank you for another opportunity to come and do the work of the people of this great state of Georgia. Father, right now we ask that everything we do be pleasing unto you. And right now we also just say a special prayer for one of our good friends, Brother Josh Waller and his family. I ask that you keep them in your hedge of protection, guide them and strengthen them, and let them look to you for strength, for mercy, and for grace. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. Well, we are welcome to the Steve Gooch show today. But before that starts, we're going to recognize Representative Kirby to present House Bill 999. I'm sorry, House Resolution. Stand corrected. And go.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Resolution 999. We're working off of Committee Sub LC 393422S. If you've ever heard that government has no common sense, we got a chance to change that today. This is all about common sense. This is an urging resolution. We're going to ask our Department of Transportation to do something, and that is to look at what lane we ought to put through trucks in. As you drive down the interstate, you drive through a lane that says no trucks over 6 wheels in the left 2 lanes. Well, isn't that backwards? In what I call my previous life, I took care of a bunch of show cattle. I've been from coast to coast. I've traveled every mile of I-64, I-65, I-70, and I-75, plus a whole lot more, most of them in a truck and trailer. And as you run through these cities and they put you in the right lane, what else is going on? Cars and minivans getting on and off. And you put the trucks and cars together at 65, 70 miles an hour, it doesn't work out too good for those cars. And at the speeds we drive in Georgia, it's even worse. And all this does is say, let's look at through trucks, put them in the left lane. What will that do for us from a safety standpoint? Put the trucks left, cars getting on and off to the right. Before COVID, is 2018, I was out west. I think it was Tulsa, but don't hold me to it because I was in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri, all 4. And there was one city that had done that. And I realized all of a sudden we were going through there, even though I wasn't in a big truck, traffic was moving really smooth. The big trucks going down that left-hand side and everybody else getting on and off to the right. And even today, as I was coming in here on I-20, before we got into side the belt line, there was a minivan in the middle lane of the 3, truck in the right lane where they're all supposed to be. Minivan decided they're going to get off. They speed up real quick, cut 3 lanes over right onto the ramp. Big truck on and brakes, all he could do. Probably could read the VIN number. They were so close. Thank goodness they didn't hit. But I think it's just something that we should look at. This resolution asks for the Department of Transportation to study it and report back to this Transportation Committee next January. And that's all it does. And I'll answer any questions if you want.
All right. Thank you, Representative. Any questions here in the room? Any questions online? We do have a few people online for those in the room. Seeing no questions. Well, one just popped up. Representative Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Brother Kirby, for being able to bring this. And, as you know, I'm in Henry County, where, everyone stops in Henry. Hopefully they're able to stay while they are. But I think particularly having this type of study to be able to see whether that's feasible, especially even to see whether or not the drivers themselves were be able to really shift their mindset into thinking that the left lane is not a place that you can speed, but possibly to have it to where you can keep at least keep the roadways from being clogged and be able to keep that traffic moving off the expressway. I think that actually might be very helpful. So just thank you for bringing us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other questions. All right, one more. Representative Barton.
Thanks, Tom. Have you asked the DOT if they do research on this all the time, or is this something that just needs to be looked at again?
When I did the research on, first thing I found out, it's actually in statute that we have put years ago that trucks are in the right lane. So before they don't have the authority just to do it on their own. So it would take legislative action. So we thought the best bet after I just talked to my local DOT guy. He said, let's do it in a study committee, see what it looks like. And then if they need to come back, it would be up to the General Assembly to actually change the law to allow it.
Representative Thomas.
Thank you. I actually have a little bit of concern about putting trucks in the left lane. They're usually governed. I'm concerned about them not being able to pass. I'm concerned about what traffic that's going to get stuck behind them. Packed traffic at high speeds seems like something that might cause some issues. I'm not against it. I just got a little concern there, but that's it.
All right. I think you got your first member for a study committee. He can join you. All right. At this point, what's the pleasure of the
I have a
committee?
question, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to pass here in a second.
You
All in
guys
favor,
hear
say aye.
online members or no?
Nay, no like sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Can you guys not
All right,
hear
as, Senator
online
Gooch comes
members?
forward, I failed to mention you guys, there should be a letter in the folders, I think. If not, letter from Chairman Jaspers to the presidents of CSX Norfolk Southern, just to ask them to respond to some of the concerns that we've heard. Just kind of an urging letter to give them some encouragement to come to the table and have the conversations. We've heard a lot of concerns about some of those train issues, and I know they're diligently working on them, and we look forward to those further talks. Failed to mention that at the beginning of the meeting. Senator Gooch,
Yes, sir.
let's start with Senate Bill 558.
558. Okay, good. It's good to be with you all this afternoon. Senate Bill 558 rather is the annual housekeeping bill for the Department of Transportation. And I'll run through it real quickly. It's really simple. There's 3 sections. First section deals with how we notify each of us as there are elections held for the Department of Transportation Board. So there's 14 congressional districts in Georgia. Each congressional district has 1 DOT board member, and those board members are selected by the legislature, both the House and the Senate. And so every time there's a vacancy or their term expires, we're notified by mail, U.S. mail. The folks in Legislative Counsel's office believes this would be a much quicker method to notify each of us. Instead of doing it by mail, we would do it by email in our Senate or House email accounts. And so that's what Section 1 does. Section 2 is cleanup language on the RFP process that we currently do for P3s. Lines 40 and 41 are technical corrections to reflect the intent of the language change. It changes request for proposals with request for proposal revisions. So that's just cleanup language. And then the last section of the bill deals with the information in open records, dealing primarily with data, identification of drivers in express lanes and on our state highways. So this would exclude personal vehicle information and history that is being collected by the DOT and by their private companies. So if you're in the right of way, or if you're in the express lanes, that data gets gathered every time you're in it. So this would exempt your personal information from those records, open records requests, Freedom of Information Act. Mr. Chairman, that's all the bill does.
For the committee, will you give us that LC number there?
Pull it up. It should be LC 39344-5S. Is that what you have?
That's right. Just want to make sure everybody's on the same page.
All right. And I believe you have I believe you amended it. And that wasn't part of my original bill. That's on lines 56 and 57. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We're going to recognize Chairman Jaspers.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you look in section 3 for our modular housing units, you'll see we're extending the length that they can be on Georgia roads to 84 feet from 80 feet. Jimmy Cotty, who represents them, will be glad to come and explain, some ramifications about that. No, this is
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jimmy Cotty with the Georgia Manufactured Housing Association. This bill simply, like Chairman Jasper said, it adds 4 feet to the length of a home that can be built and transported in Georgia. The industry looks at this more as kind of a economic competitiveness issue. Our neighboring states can all do homes of this size, the additional square footage added. And this would allow Georgia manufacturers to build and sell them and ship them in Georgia, sell and ship them to other states as well and compete there with those size homes. And the crux of the bill basically gives us 4 feet and would require permitting for any trucks or any homes of that size.
Chairman Jasper.
so just give what you would, as you and I talked earlier, talk about the weight of these.
Okay. This is not to conflate this with any weight law issues that have been discussed this session. This is a length issue. The average home is probably about 550 to 600 pounds per linear foot. So at 600 pounds, you're talking about a home that's 48,000 pounds plus up to about 20,000 pounds with a truck towing it. You're looking at a total weight of 68,000-ish pounds on the average. The heaviest of homes, if they're built with 2x6 sidewalls, they're fully drywalled, they have raised roofs, all of that, can push upwards of 750 pounds per linear foot, which would push us right up towards about the 80,000. But nothing about this addition should take us over 80,000 in terms of truck weights.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the committee knew that, because I knew we discussed that a little bit last week, and that this has nothing to do with that, but makes your business more competitive with the region.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Mr. Cotty? Any questions for Senator Gooch? Thank you, Jimmy. All right, hearing Norm, what's the,
Make a motion to do pass.
now's the proper time.
Make a move that we do pass.
Hear a motion and a second. All members in favor say aye. Like sign. No, like sign. Hearing none, motion is passed. Senator Gooch, you want to go on to 586?
Sure. Thank you. Senate Bill 586, although it's not officially named this, we've nicknamed it the Kevin Tanner Act. This came as a request of Kevin Tanner. You know him as the former chairman of the committee. He is now the county manager in Forsyth County, and they have a lot of transportation needs, as we all do around our states. One of the tools that we use in our toolbox here at DOT is called a design build procurement process. Counties are not offered that same procurement method. And so this bill would basically mirror image almost identically to what the DOT uses today under their design build provisions for procurement. So in design build, instead of designing a project by hiring an engineer and then putting it out for bid and then issuing the bid in the contract to the contractor, you would allow for RFPs to be issued. An RFP is a request for proposal. The RFPs would specify what the project consists of. It may be bridges, maybe rail projects, roads primarily. Just depends on what your needs are. You would put out that RFP, you would put the criteria, the counties would, just like we do at the state level. And they would send those RFPs in. There would be two envelopes. One envelope would have the basically the proposal without the price. It would have all of the different design concepts and the methods of how they would mitigate congestion, how they would mitigate impact to the environment, so forth and so on. After those RFPs are scored, and they would be scored based on a weighting system like we do at the state, after all those RFPs are scored and evaluated, then you would open the envelope consisting of the price. And then the price will also be factored in as the deciding factor on who gets the award. So it wouldn't always be the lowest bidder per se. It could be someone that's second lowest, but they have a better proposal. They have a better way of basically delivering the product at a faster time with less impact to the neighborhoods, whatever, with less impact to the streams and the environment. So this works well at the DOT. We do put a limit of how much can be spent on one of these projects each year, and it's based on 50% of the prior year's budget. So if Forsyth County spent $100 million last year on transportation, then this design build concept would be limited to 50% of that. One other restriction in the bill is one that requires whoever the contractor is that is selected to do the design work and the construction, they have to perform at least 30% of the work. That way you wouldn't have one contractor basically subbing everything out and not having any skin in the game. So that's pretty much what it does. There's provisions in here to allow counties to set up their own ordinances and resolutions on that to decide how they want to go through the scoring process. You could have weighting numbers that vary depending on what's more important to that community.
Thank you, Senator. Few questions. Representative Barton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's just counties that cities aren't, I don't see cities are not involved in here.
The cities were asked to be included, and I thought we were going to do that over here in the House, but I don't see that. I don't see a sub. Do y'all have a sub in front of you? So I'm working off of LC 393328. So apparently the cities have not come forward to your committee to ask for that. Typically, we wouldn't provide a sub to you. That would be provided by one of you. So they're not in the bill. That we can come back next year and do that if y'all would like, but it's up to the committee's prerogative.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman
Chairman. Representative Barton, the cities did not come to the committee to ask to be included.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Thomas.
I have one concern. Typically design build projects, they benefit larger firms. A lot of the smaller businesses can't, smaller engineering firms, they can't compete in design because they just don't have that kind of capital behind them. Have you talked with the American Council for Engineering Companies at all about their position on any of this?
They supported this 3 years ago, I believe, when we passed this for the DOT to use.
Okay.
And so they've implemented it. And what we've found, it's over the 2 or 3 years it's been in effect, is that, you'll have a rather large contractor that may put a bid in an RFP in for one of these projects, but they'll sub a lot of their work out to smaller firms. And so the engineering companies like Pond, I think Representative Smith used to work with them. They could partner up with CW Matthews and they could provide the finished product from the design phase all the way to the ribbon cutting. And so you do get smaller companies. It depends on the size and the scope of the project. If it's a large project like the MMIP projects up on the 285 and 400 interchange, you wouldn't want a small design company.
Mhm.
You'd want a very large and a very qualified engineering company to partner with you on that.
So just to follow up with
Sure.
one more question. Those are larger GDOT projects, but these municipal projects are typically quite a bit smaller. And that's the
Yeah,
reason. that's
It's
kind of
all,
the
it's
difference
all a matter
between
of
the two.
scale. So you could have a turn lane that would maybe cost $250,000.
Mhm.
You could use a local engineer for that. That's a small project. Doesn't require a large company like HNTB.
Mhm.
You could go to a local community and get an engineer that's certified and that's registered engineers does a lot of DOT work, and they would be very capable of helping the local contractor. And that's the other good thing about this. Local governments can do fast response projects. They can put in turn lanes very, very quickly. Instead of doing the old traditional method of doing a design and then put it out for bid, you can have this whole thing done within 90 days versus the traditional method could take 180.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, online, we have Representative Carpenter has a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Gooch, for bringing this bill. Would it be fair to say that this bill would allow the private sector to come up with solutions in regards to transportation projects and not limit it to just a one size fits all government top solution?
Very good question and good comment, Mr. Carpenter. We saw this, I believe, on Georgia 400 when we added an extra lane from Alpharetta up into Forsyth County, and they had different proposals. Every company has a different method of how they would propose adding the lane with minimum impact to the traffic. As you know, Georgia 400 is a highly traveled roadway in Georgia, very congested, and the different proposals came in, and actually they ended up saving millions of dollars with their proposal. So this is, it incentivizes creativity. Also, it incentivizes different methods of delivery, and that's what's good about it.
Absolutely. And one further question, Chairman.
Go ahead.
Could a local county could also put within their scoring stipulations that if you're a local company, you automatically get 10 bonus points or anything like that to incentivize using local companies?
You know, I don't know if that's permissible in transportation projects. I've seen counties like Clayton County do that with some of their water and sewer projects. They have local discounts for local bidders. So you may be right. You know what you speak. I'm not real sure on that.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no more questions. What's the will of committee? Hear a motion? Is there a second? Hear a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Hearing none, on the rules.
Thank you.
And on to Senate Resolution 463. Dealing with EVs, want to recognize Chairman Powell's work in with the EVs, and I know this is kind of taking another step with that. So let's look forward to your presentation.
Sure. So SR 463 is a joint study committee resolution dealing with something that we're all learning a lot about in a hurry, and that is the electric vehicle industry that is literally growing at rapid pace. If you follow some of the federal regulations that are being passed, some of the policies that are being adopted by the current Biden administration, you know that the future for combustible engines may be fading away. There's an attempt to push to electrify almost all the vehicles on our roadways in the next 20 or 30 years. Some people think that's a little ambitious. I tend to agree. But by the year 2035, there's going to be a huge increase of electricity or electric driven cars on our roads. That also includes heavy trucks, autonomous vehicles. So this whole industry is changing rapidly, and we need to be prepared for it. And this issue is something that's going to take some time to study. I don't think we can rush a bill or two through the Senate and the House this year. I think there was several bills that attempted to do that. One of the things that we want to study is how do we fund transportation? As you all know, we worked hard in 2015 to pass House Bill 170 for additional revenues to help maintain our bridges and roads. That extra $1 billion a year has done a lot of good. However, if we completely eliminate the combustible engine, then we don't make money to pay for the roads and bridges. So we would lose potentially $3 billion a year in state and federal funding. So this study committee will look at how do we fund transportation if we no longer have the motor fuel tax. So we're going to have to look at how do we assess some kind of a fee to these electric cars and trucks. And so it's going to take a lot of time. Also, the infrastructure is not in place right now to charge these vehicles. A lot of people who buy small Teslas or Volts, different kinds of electric cars, have home chargers. A lot of them are hooked up in their garages or out in their driveways, and they plug them in at night, charge them overnight, and they may get 100, 200 miles, maybe 300 miles on a charge. Well, if you're driving from Dahlonega to Atlanta, that's 65 miles one way. You're going to have to find a charging station somewhere if you only get a 100-mile charge before you can get back home. So we're not seeing a lot of the charging stations out there yet, but there are some. Different people are putting them in private lots. There's a demand for that as we go forward. There's going to have to be even more charging stations put out. The federal government has earmarked, I think it's several $billions, $5 billion for these charging stations to be put out across the country. The DOT has been charged with coming up with a plan for these charging stations. I believe the DOT is in line to receive $134 million. Their plan needs to be submitted sometime in the late summer, August 1st, I believe is the deadline. So we need to work with the DOT as well to see how we're going to build this infrastructure across the state. Do we do it on right of ways? Do we do it at rest stops? Do we do it in convenience stores, hotel parking lots? Probably all of the above. We know convenience stores have a strong interest in charging stations as well, and they're going to want to get some favorable rates potentially for their charging stations. So we have to look at what does the Territorial Act look like for this? How does it impact our Georgia Power and our EMC partners in keeping good energy and affordable energy in Georgia? So this study committee creates 11-member committee, 4 members from the Senate, one of which is the chairman of transportation, and one is the chairman of regulated industries, and then two members are appointed by the lieutenant governor. Over in the House, the speaker would appoint 4 members, one of which would be the transportation chairman. The other would be the chairman of utilities telecommunications committee, and then 2 other members of the House. Along with the legislative members, you would have the DOT commissioner and the commissioner of economic development and the chairperson of the Georgia Public Service Commission. The work would be done over the summer and the fall, and a report would be due back to the General Assembly by the 1st of December.
Well, Senator, I'll start by saying I appreciate you bringing this measure. I know that, our current funding model has worked brilliantly. Those that came before me and put that in place, and you can see that in our roads and bridges as it is now.
Yes.
So certainly something to be looking at. We'll start with Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whip Gooch, thank you. I think we've had more meetings in our offices over this than anything this year.
There's strong interest in this topic, very
I
strong.
was just sitting here trying to think of how many hours we've all talked about this. And I think you hopefully agree that the more we talked about it, the more questions that didn't have answers.
Absolutely.
And, we all sometimes reluctant to do joint study committee sometimes, but this is one, I think, committee that's very imperative we do, and we do it right. I look forward to working on it with them. There's a lot of interest in this. And I think one thing that the senator said is we've got to make sure that we figure out a way to capture the excise tax off electricity that's sold so that we keep the 170 that we all know is very important there for roads and bridges. And I think that'll be that's one of our main goals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for both y'all's work this past year and all that. Representative Holly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Gooch. You're always on top of it. And particularly looking at this, and I know particularly it hasn't actually set the definition out there for it in terms of electrical vehicle. We know that, and prior to this time, we've had the hybrid technology that uses both the engine to be able to make up for whatever is not charged up with it. Will hybrid cars be included in that study? Because sometimes they, if the engine doesn't kick over, sometimes they are able to kind of charge those up.
Sure, that's a good point. We can include that in our discussion. We kept the language in this resolution pretty broad, so we can look at things like you're talking about with hybrid. We could also look at compressed natural gas. We could also look at the topic that some people in the room probably get nervous about. That is direct sales of electric vehicles. You've heard that topic this session as well. So we're going to keep it broad in the language in the bill. So we'll have some flexibility and be able to bring in the witnesses and the experts to talk about the entire industry and how important it's going to be for Georgia's future.
Thank you. And just one further, if it's okay. Have you seen yet? I know I've watched the YouTubes of the big Tesla 18-wheeler. Has it actually been on Georgia roads that you know thus far for having one of these big deliveries of an electrical truck?
I have not seen when you say big, I'm
Yeah,
assuming
like
you're talking about a
18-wheeler.
18-wheeler,
Yeah.
maximum 80,000 pounds.
Eight-
I have not seen a truck do that. I'd love to see the size battery that it would take. But
Yeah.
that's one of the things we want to dig into is maybe we would take a trip up to SK Batteries and talk about how they plan to build a battery large enough to pull an 80,000 pound vehicle full of cargo.
No, that's fine. Just
Yeah.
thank you. Just know that, we're all shocked. None of us want to, be caught flat-footed
Right.
when all this is being presented, but we know that this industry is constantly growing and
Sure.
being able to, apply it. That'd be good.
Based on the conversations we've had with Rivian, they have plans to build hundreds of thousands of mid-sized trucks for delivery trucks like Amazon Prime and so forth. So we know the technology's there and it's going to get better. So we need to be prepared for it.
Chairman Jasper.
Just want to follow up, Representative. They are doing it in Arizona. And I think with the big transfer trucks, and those are under a pilot project. Remember, they're on usually on federal highways. It's under US DOT, and all the manufacturers are in it, trying to perfect it, so that can come along too. It's just a natural progression, just like you said. It's really cutting edge technology.
We will probably in our lifetime see these 18-wheelers electric driven with no driver. And so that's in the near future.
Not seeing any online, right? All right, so hearing no more questions, what's the will of committee? Motion to pass. Here's a second. All in favor, say aye. Against, like sign. Motion passes. On the rules.
Thank you very much.
Roll credits on the Gooch Show
That's
today.
it.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Y'all, as we go on,
One-stop shop.
one last thing, I would just keep the Waller family in your prayers. I know it's going to be a tough time for them. Chairman Jaspers.
Mr. Chairman, just one moment. We forget about some people. I just want to recognize Jenna. She really does a tremendous amount of work as she's been under for the last 24 hours. I don't know how you've done it, because she's also legislative counsel for public safety. And what others?
House Motor Vehicles, Senate Public Safety, and Senate Transportation.
Oh, so
That's where it was, Senate Public Safety. Sorry.
yeah, so we have Mr. Chairman, really loaded her up in the last 24 hours with a lot of subs, as you see here, and in public safety on both sides. And Jenna, thank you very much. We appreciate you.
With that, we're going to stand adjourned.